Madam Speaker, when it was Little X that plays at Christmas and watch the Little X, and then it was when Little X actually partnered with the Eastern Institute of Technologies. That's when it became UCCB, Madam Speaker, over 30 years ago. 30 years ago, Madam Speaker, for some time, recruiters have gone out and reported that certain name is challenging for recruiting off-island students. Increasing off-island enrollment is crucial. Since our island's university age population is declining, attracting more students is one of the university's primary goals. Since their target is prospective university students across the country, Madam Speaker, the name Breton University was favored amongst most students that were asked this question, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's important, I guess, a good debate, and this will be a good debate at Cape Breton probably for many years to come. But Madam Speaker, let me ask you, when I say the word St. Francis Xavier University, Madam Speaker, when I say Dalhousie University and St. Mary's University, is there any geographical location with that, Madam Speaker? Those universities. When you're saying Mount Allison University, is there any? You know, I mean, are they geographically have their name? You know, strengthening the image and the identity of the university works to attract more students, fulfill its growing reputation for providing excellence in post-secondary education. You know, the board of the UCCB governors, Board of Governors, includes alumni, includes the student union, includes people in the community. Those are the people that spoke on this issue, Madam Speaker. You know, unanimously that they support this change, Madam Speaker. I look and I think of like Yale and Harvard. Where are they located at, Madam Speaker? Those universities are very prestigious universities all over this world. Geographically, do you know where Harvard is? Yale. You know, so I mean, Madam Speaker, I think that we have to encourage people to make changes. Sometimes people are very difficult to deal with the change. You know, Breton University, you know, can become one of those prestigious universities, which is already making its turn to do that, Madam Speaker. You know, when we send our recruiters out to get people to come in, our outward migration of our students and our population is not going to sustain this university, Madam Speaker, as it stands right now. It takes a bold move, and the Vice Chancellor, John Harker, has made a decision, along with the Board of Governors, the student union, and the alumni, to say that we have to make this move to make this university a better place, Madam Speaker. And I think it takes somebody with courage to make a change, and these people that have courage and conviction to make that change, Madam Speaker. And I applaud them, and I look forward to this going to law amendments so we can hear both sides of view, Madam Speaker. We're going to look at, Madam Speaker, when it goes to law amendments, and we will have a debate on both sides of this issue, Madam Speaker. And as I look forward to this happening, I thank you very much for your time, and thank you.
The honourable member from Cape Breton West.
Go ahead. You sure? Oh, I do apologize, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief on this particular piece of legislation. I certainly respect the opinions of all members of the House on this particular issue. It's a very important issue. It may be somewhat of an emotional issue for some, perhaps a little more than others. And the more attached you become to Cape Breton, the more emotional it can become. And I certainly respect that, Madam Speaker. I certainly respect many of the presentations that have been put forth to date. And I suppose over the last week I've been asking myself, what is in a name? And the first thing I thought of, obviously, when this issue of Breton University versus University College at Cape Breton came before the House, I reminded myself of what happened in Cape Breton West over the course of history. It wasn't until 1933 that the name Cape Breton even showed up in the constituency of Cape Breton West. From 1820 to 1933, Cape Breton West was a part of Richmond County. In fact, it was known as being in the constituency of Richmond County. And it wasn't until 1933 that it became known as Richmond West Cape Breton. And then it wasn't until later in history, Madam Speaker, that eventually it became Cape Breton West. And since that time, it's gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different geographical dimensions, of configuration. And so, in fact, even Cape Breton West presently contains part of my colleague's constituency from the neighboring constituency of Glace Bay. So it is. It's a very interesting. It's a very important debate. The history of our family to UCCB, and in fact, St. Yves University Junior College, as it was once known, the Sydney campus, and indeed St. Yves University in Antigonish goes back several generations. In fact, I'm very proud to say that 2 of our children graduated from the University College of Cape Breton, and have gone on to study, one at the University of Calgary and one here in Metro, extending his personal and professional career in other endeavors. As well, one of my siblings who graduated from from St. Yves University, the Sydney campus, back in, I believe it was 1963. That I keep using the acronym or the reference to junior college. And at that time, St. Yves University Junior College, Sydney campus, didn't have the full degree granting rights that St. Yves University in Antigonish did. It was only by concurrence and the authorization of St. Yves University in Antigonish that those authorities and rights and privileges and powers would be conveyed. And it wasn't until 1974 that the college, an act to create the College of Cape Breton, was in fact enacted. And it wasn't until 8 years later, in I believe it was June 28th, 1982, that an act further amending the act of the College of Cape Breton was passed to create the University College of Cape Breton. And to a certain measure, Mr. Speaker, welcome to the chair, there has been considerable consternation about what many would perceive to be somewhat of an oxymoron, and that is having the name university and college in the same title, because it seemed to be sending mixed messages. And certainly by moving towards the name of university and holistically in its name, I would agree. I think it's certainly to a certain extent Cape Breton coming of age, and the powers to be, the stakeholders, the president and the board of governors, who represent not just the administration or the faculty or the students, but there are community representatives that are appointed from the community at large. I'm sure many members of the House have had opportunity to have their input at that. I know we certainly do when it comes to the Human Resources Committee, and I know on a previous day that I certainly took issue with one of the appointments there, but that's part of the process. And while that appointment was eventually ratified, I didn't support that appointment. Some would say it was for political purposes. I thought it was for other reasons. But that's part of the process, and I respect that. I fully respect the comments of my colleague. I too have received emails. Perhaps I'm not quite as popular. I haven't received as many. I only received 4 in total. And all 4, plus one phone call from a past president of the Tory Party of Progressive Conservative Party of Nova Scotia, suggesting that I raise this issue. But I've done that, and one other constituent who asked me to raise it as well. But the overwhelming and the general consensus from my constituency and for the stakeholders that I represent and have communicated with feel that that Breton University may not have been their first choice, but they don't have a problem with it. And so you ask yourself, as someone who comes from that end of the province, who has a very strong historical, cultural, and emotional attachment to it, I mean, what is Cape Breton? I mean, simply defined, it's New Scotland, and that is by extension, because many of the characteristics and the people and the heritage, and that was quite evident. I mean, there's a unique character, and there are unique characteristics to this beautiful island, which is why from 1784 till 1820, it was not part of the province of Nova Scotia. It was a British colony with its own House of Parliament or its own legislature, with the capital being Sydney. And one thing that I do believe that we all have to appreciate is that this unique culture and this unique history is much akin to what's happened with Labrador and Newfoundland, and that feeling of isolationism and the feeling that perhaps somehow that there are unique characteristics that sometimes are overlooked and not appreciated, because it wasn't until perhaps just around the time of the Second World War thereafter, 75% of all the resources that were provided for the Nova Scotia government to operate came from the resources of Cape Breton Island. And that's a documented fact, Mr. Speaker. And we have to appreciate that. We have to appreciate this evolutionary process. But in the final analysis, I don't really do have any great difficulty with the name that moves us to the next level of this stage of our history. Those that have compelling arguments for a counter position, I certainly respect that. But Mr. Speaker, I felt it was important to raise those issues, certainly on behalf of those in my constituency that do take issue with this name change. But myself, Mr. Speaker, I'll certainly be supporting this going on to law amendments and for full approbation.
Recognize young member for Victoria Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak against Bill 97. Opposite to my... Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that the name Cape Breton gives credence and stature to the island that we belong to. The initials BU or Boo, maybe it's because Halloween is coming soon, but I don't believe that that's a very good acronym for something that I hold near and dear to Cape Breton. Worrying about Bill 97 creating a higher position on the list of a person from Maclean's magazine doesn't interest me in the least. A name change is not going to elevate the stature of that institution. It's going to take work. Work is a four-letter word, and some people don't want to use it and some people don't want to practice it, Mr. Speaker. A letter to the editor in the Halifax Herald and the Cape Breton Post from a student by the name of Richard Parks has put everything into perspective for him and for a lot of people down there. He's wondering what all the attention is being given to the change of the name when he would like to see the Board of Governors focus more on the cost of education. When students have the marks and the mentality to go to college, but are severely impacted by the cost, then that student would like to know, where does he stand? Take that money, the tremendous cost of changing the name, just the printing costs alone, and maybe put that into the form of bursaries for students who are struggling financially to make ends meet and to try to make a better future for themselves. Mr. Speaker, the cost of reprinting the stationery, the business cards, the sign change, and every other cost associated with the name change would go a great distance to reduce the debt for students. I refer to the Minister of Energy as being the minister closest to the situation in my area down there, but I feel that by promoting what he is doing in favor of this name change, he's showing a lack of depth in the caring for my and his beloved island. And I would like to remind the minister that it's not the $500 a plate people who vote for him in Breton North, or is it still Cape Breton North? And I feel that there must be a certain amount of shame felt for the name Cape. And I also, as I say, refer to the minister because he's closest to the situation. I refer to the Minister of Health Promotion also as being one who has great experience with the culture of Cape Breton. He partakes of it on a continual basis and is very well involved in that. And I would like to see more support for the name Cape Breton from both of these ministers. In a few short years, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman who is the president there today may decide to move on. The name change will be, for him, I would say, another notch in the belt of his curriculum vitae. I have family members who have graduated from UCCB and will often receive master's degrees and return to live, work, and raise families in this wonderful island of Cape Breton. The Board of Governors, Mr. Speaker, made up of a lot of very well-to-do people, most of whom have made their fortunes in Cape Breton, are all too willing also to ignore their roots for an off-island name in hopes of being elevated on a list of Maclean's magazine. Mr. Speaker, I refer to the four-letter word work, and that's what I would like to see this board knuckle down and promote the island. The cost of the name change is one thing, but the very name itself, University of Cape Breton, would identify the island in itself. If this goes through like it looks like it will, with the amount of support that it's receiving, Mr. Speaker, money is going to have to be spent then to identify and advertise where Breton University is located. Right now, the name identifies the island, and there's a cost saving there alone. And what's the cost of pride? Who can put a cost on that? Mr. Speaker, Cape Breton is the home of Celtic Colours, a cultural festival of international proportions within a very few short years have gained international recognition. We are the #2 visiting spot in the whole world on the list of tourism places to visit. What's wrong with Cape Breton? Nothing. Mr. Speaker, we have the world-renowned Cabot Trail located in Cape Breton, recognized worldwide. Although it's been allowed to deteriorate, it's a world icon. I've also touched already on the strong cultural diversities, as we hear from various members that have accentuated that have spoken before me. Mr. Speaker, we've lost the steel mill. We've lost the coal mines. Our economy is in serious doubt. And it looks like the train is getting ready to leave the station. And the Honourable Minister of Energy has just returned from Nunavut up there. I understand he was up there for a change of trains or something like that, but I don't believe there's any trains up there. I would like to see the Minister concentrate more on the needs of Cape Breton. Mr. Speaker, the member from Timberley Prospect, he boasted about how successful the name UPEI became as a result of a name change, and this name change added the name PEI to the university, giving credence to Prince Edward Island and credence to that university. We are now losing the prominence of the name Cape Breton from our university, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I would like to do at this time is reference a letter that was sent to me by a present student by the name of Kirk McCaskill. And I read, "Hi, my name is Kirk McCaskill. I am a 20-year-old student at the University College of Cape Breton, or is it Breton University? I am writing to voice my concern regarding this name change to our beloved educational institution. I could always have a sense of pride regardless of whom I was speaking to when I told them the name of the institution in which I attend. When I heard of the possible name change, I was not altogether disappointed. My only thought was that the dropping of the college from the name, which I felt I would be able to live with as long as the college-level courses were offered. When I found out there was unanimous support among the Board of Governors for a name of the school to become Breton University, I can honestly say that I felt a sick feeling in my stomach, especially when you look at the dictionary definition of the word. And he includes it, Brittany, or of relating to Brittany or its people, language, or culture, a native or inhabitant of Brittany, the Celtic language of Brittany. To me, as a current student and future alumni of the university and a lifelong resident of Cape Breton, I am outraged. This new name does not represent the university geographically. I can't tell people from abroad where I study, as when I would say UCCB, they would know exactly where I was getting my education. Now when I say I go to BU or BU, I hear them now. Where the heck is that? The initials themselves leave much to be desired, and he quotes again BU. Though there was a poll conducted and slightly over 60% of the students polled were in support of the name change, though there was no voice given to the students as to what the university would be named, this alone should be enough for me to fill transfer papers to another university. The actions taken by the University Board of Governors has undoubtedly taken any respect I had for my beloved university. Who do you think the cost of this name change will fall upon? It will be the students who will bear the brunt of this in our upcoming tuition costs, which are plenty high already. Although while we pay for such a thing, we have no say. The faculty as well had no voice in the name change, even though many members of the faculty spend a great part of their lives and careers here. In my heart, I will always be a student of UCCB, and if you feel the same way, I would urge you to talk to your local MLA, as this name change is still in its first reading in the legislature. Thanks, Kirk McCaskill, BACS Policing. This gentleman is on his way to becoming a member of the RCMP, and I will be tabling that letter, Mr. Speaker, along with another one that I intend to read and enter into the record, Mr. Speaker. Another letter, Mr. Speaker, that I will be tabling comes from a gentleman by the name of Charles Gillis. Mr. Sampson, as a constituent of the island, I would like to voice my dissatisfaction with the UCC Board of Directors' removal of any reference to Cape Breton Island in the name of our university. As an alumni and supporter of UCCB, I believe this institution should represent our community in name as well as actions. As an island representative, I hope you will relay mine and other objections to the board's decision in the legislature. Thank you, Charles Gillis, and I will be tabling that letter also, Mr. Speaker. The third letter that I had was from Paul Moore, and my colleague from Glace Bay has already read that into the record, Mr. Speaker, but rather than read it again, I will table that one also, Mr. Speaker, and that will be there. Mr. Speaker, I will also reference the name of John Abbas, a quite prominent member of the Conservative Party, who contacted me by phone and to get my reaction, as he was outraged against the change of the name. And I will not reference that any further, as my learned colleague from Cape Breton, Kings West, will be referencing that letter. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the next thing to go from Cape Breton is the train. What and how much more do we have to lose before people will start to fight to defend the name Cape Breton? I must reference the Board of Directors again, or the Board of Governors, Mr. Speaker. And one prominent member of that board fought me for 4 years against the inception of economic development. I refer to the mussel farm in St. Anne's Bay. I was the brunt of that gentleman's speech at a dinner where he stood and spoke eloquently about the beautiful Bay of St. Anne, how in the morning when the sun rises and the mist rises over the beautiful bay and the pristine nature of that bay. But I would like for the record to remind that honourable gentleman that the only mist I was seeing for 4 years rising over that bay was the tears of the parents because their young people had to leave and find employment somewhere else. Whereas now that mussel farm is growing slowly and steadily and continuing to hire one and two and slowly and steadily building, Mr. Speaker. Number two, any product and every bit of product that will be produced on that mussel farm is already sold over in Europe. So what a very prospective business to fight against when you have to have somebody to fight against economic development. Mr. Speaker, I look at I have a vision for our island's future. I'd like to fight for that and promote it. I don't know how well the Honourable Minister of Energy is on country music. I may have the opportunity to find that out sometime. But there's a very popular country song. And one of the lines of that popular country song is, "Pick me up on your way down when you're blue and all alone."
Order, please. There's too much noise in the chamber. Ask the members to take their conversations outside, please. Now, member for Victoria Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll reference once again, Mr. Speaker, the line from that song, "Pick me up on your way down when you're blue and all alone." Now, we understand the minister is blue, Tory blue. That's fine. We respect that. But pick me up on your way down, well, if the minister doesn't start paying attention to Cape Breton and Cape Breton issues, Mr. Speaker, after the next election, he'll be all alone because right now there's nothing being done for Cape Breton. Mr. Speaker, the University of New Brunswick, UNB, a name well respected. UBC, University of British Columbia. I understand that name was changed somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 6 times before it finally got to be the University of British Columbia, which is now highly respected. And what's wrong with UCB, University of Cape Breton? Mr. Speaker, at a gathering Saturday night, a public gathering, I asked the people's opinion there, as I would be speaking against the name of the loss of Cape Breton on Monday in the legislature, and I asked what was their opinion, and I received a resounding round of applause to speak against it as I had planned. And Mr. Speaker, I took that as a real benefit to myself to support my stand on this. Mr. Speaker, I've referenced Kurt McCaskill's letter, Paul Moore's letter, the letter from Charles Gillis. I referenced young Mr. Parks, how passionate he feels about the cost and what we should be doing with the money. I referenced John Abbott's phone call. Mr. Speaker, one final note about Cape Bretoners. And let's use Halifax for an example. If we took the Cape Breton people out of the communities in Halifax, and we took the Cape Breton business people and brains out of the business community of Halifax, I feel quite sure that the infrastructure of both would crumble. And that's been our greatest export for years, has been our brains and our bodies. Mr. Speaker, I'm preparing to conclude with one question to the House and to all Cape Bretoners to stand up and support against this loss of name. And I quote one more quote from another popular song, Mr. Speaker, "Are we just a rock in the stream?" Thank you very much.
Y'all remember Kings West?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a few comments to make on Bill 97. Perhaps a little...
Order, please. Order, please. Y'all remember Kings West has the floor.
A little less emotional than some of my colleagues, but nevertheless, I feel Bill 97 does need a second look. I am opposed to the current name proposed for the university. Certainly, when I look at UCCB, that poses some difficulties, and I recognize that a name change indeed is in order. UCCB is cumbersome, and the university college concepts don't seem to mesh together too well. And I think a lot of people would have liked to have had the wider opportunity to speak about a name that, in fact, like many of our glorious institutions in Nova Scotia, would become a lasting name. In many ways, I think perhaps the board, and in particular influenced by the new president, have succumbed to some degree by what I call the Maclean's magazine syndrome. That when you show up in 38th place, you feel that some change in perception and in optics is what is needed, and I feel that this was part of the drive behind the change here. I know the new president is making a lot of inroads and a lot of connections and so on with the community, but I know this certainly stands as a way of making his mark. And I do believe UCCB should have a name change. It is just a 30-year-old institution that has kind of struggled with its identity. But however, I think now some pressures have come to bear on that change. So in walks a marketing company with a strategy, you know, BU, Breton University, a takeoff on existing institutions sounds great. But I asked the question, what happened to University of Cape Breton or Cape Breton University? A name, in my view, that captures geography, history, heritage and culture, and an island, a North American and globally known island. I would contend that UCB, University of Cape Breton, after dropping just one C and a college in its infancy, and that it should embrace the Cape Breton dimension for its name, because it's a name that includes place, history, culture, and indeed the future. It won't be marketing strategies that moves UCCB to Breton University that will create the best and brightest future. I believe it's going to be about a vision and programs and capturing some of the initiatives that are going on at the college right now. Looking at things like applied...
Order, please. Member Kings West.
Applied arts and technology programs, coordinating with Memorial University to offer a one-year education program, the introduction of nursing programs, and again, perhaps a chair or departments that can grow not only to be Nova Scotia renowned, but perhaps Canada and the world. So we have the chance here to offer, you know, students recognition, ranking, and a first-class university to be known internationally. And in my view, there is a growing reaction throughout Cape Breton that Cape Breton needs to be part of that new name university to become internationally known. And I do want to enter one of today's Voice of the People letters to the editor, and it goes, rallying point. I am against the name change proposed for University College of Cape Breton. Monsignor Malcolm McClellan, founder of Xavier Junior College, with the support of the mine and steelworkers of Cape Breton, and I was there with my camera recording its progress from day one. It eventually became UCCB, our largest employer. The Board of Governors deliberated for an hour before they voted for the name change, as though they were naming a new candy bar or a new car. I was especially impressed by the university and the media people who refer to the importance of coal and steel to our region and suggest a name change will make our economy grow. Where were these groups when Premier John Hamm and Gordon Balser destroyed Cisco and Ralph Goodale closed the coal mines? Today, this issue surrounding the name change of UCCB can be a rallying point to make Cape Bretoners proud again, defiant, and resolve that we will not allow our largest industry since coal and steel to fade away. I expect our politicians, municipal officials, churches, and other organizations will not accept this name change proposed by Come From A Ways. John Abbas, Sydney. I would contend that perhaps having this bill go to law amendments, move to the Sydney location so that the board itself, current students, past students, future members of the community can take a look at Bill 97. In my view, there will only be one university on the island of Cape Breton, and like UPEI, it should embrace all that is great about the location. World-renowned geography, a proud history, a cultural mosaic, unique programs, and a vibrant future, all embraced by a lasting name, UCB, University of Cape Breton. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I too am very pleased to rise in the House here this evening for second reading of Bill 97, the University College Cape Breton Act. And it's been interesting to see the diversity of commentary here this evening, but I've heard some balance, and I've heard some very common sense balance from all three parties on this matter, and that's exactly what the Board of Governors sought to do and has achieved, and that is balance. The unanimity of an entire Board of Governors to achieve a decision point to move forward. And as was indicated, the university has come and it's evolved from Little X, and the member from Cape Breton Nova very well outlined the history from that, as well as the member from Cape Breton Nova and Cape Breton West, as they provided some good background. So rather than going over the history, what this is all about is the future for Cape Breton in the area, and something that is near and dear to all of us. And I can say no one member, Mr. Speaker, nor one party has the market cornered on pride of Cape Breton or caring about Cape Breton. And for the member from Victoria Lakes to suggest otherwise is irresponsible and speaks only to his desire to have some noise of the moment rather than some resonance about what our future is about and reflection upon what truly Cape Breton and the university is trying to achieve through Breton University, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, it's something that, as we've seen, whether it's moving on, Mr. Speaker, from Little X to become the UCCB and combining that. And now that we see the college component moving forward, the college portion moving forward.
Order, please. Whether it's on the record or not, I heard that what the honourable member just said, and I asked him to sit there in his place and listen to the honourable member while he speaks. Something else like that said again in this House, I'll ask the honourable member to leave. The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, the member from Glace Bay can call me a traitor, but I'm true to where I stand in this position, and I'm solid on my feet in my conviction for Breton University and for Cape Breton Island, upon which it is the host and home island for. And it's not something we're going to be deterred by the rabbit tracks and the rhetoric from certain individuals in this House when it's of fundamental importance to what we are and who we are as a people as we move forward. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, the University College of Cape Breton has been working very hard with the Nova Scotia Community College to ensure that the college components of that are encompassed in the proper program areas. And the Nova Scotia Community College's NSCC is a brand for all of Nova Scotia. But I happen to notice there's the Marconi campus, not the Cape Breton campus. There was an evolution from what was the Nautical Institute in the Strait area to the Strait campus itself. And even that institution will evolve and continue to evolve, and I hope if they come forward in the future with a name that's more appropriate for their positioning moving forward, that we'll be open-minded to that and not closed-minded, as some members of this House are proving tonight in their commentary that they are. And Mr. Speaker, I look at where the...
Now, member for Glace Bay on the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I take great exception to a Minister of the Crown standing in his place and referring to another MLA, in particular, in this case, me, as being closed-minded, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order, please. Order, please. Suffice to say, it's not a point of order. Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Well, Mr. Speaker, anyone that would call another member a traitor in this House is closed-minded.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. I'd ask the honourable member not to use comments like that in the House, please. As I've already asked the member from Glace Bay, which I agree was not on the record, but that certainly was. The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we both get the point, and we'll adhere to your findings in this House. Mr. Speaker, we do have to recognize that we are trying to move forward, and members of this House, as I say, have addressed it quite well. We are trying to respect the decision-making authority that we give to the Board of Governors to move that institution forward. And it was not a light decision that they had taken. It wasn't a sudden decision that they had taken. As was indicated, there was lots of public notification of the desire to move forward. I remember in the newspapers, on the radio reports of this, it was very clear. And the names that were being proposed and considered were all stated in public. And I don't recall, at that time, a whole host of emails and or letters to the editor commenting on it, other than these were the names the university were going to review, and these were the names they were going to decide upon, and they came to a decision of one of those three names. They did what they were supposed to do as a legitimate Board of Governors for that institution, and I will respect their decision as an institution, and I'll be voting in favor of this bill, Mr. Speaker. And I want to note, Mr. Speaker, that, in echoing the comments for Cape Breton Nova and Cape Breton West, and I, as the member for Cape Breton North, am very pleased to have Cape Breton as part of my name. Mr. Speaker, none of us came forward, and threw out the name and disemboweled Cape Breton out of their constituency name when it could have been Cape Breton Glace Bay. But I remember, Mr. Speaker, in this House understanding the rationale of the member from Glace Bay. He wanted to recognize the 100th anniversary of his home community. This institution understood it. This institution of the legislature did not stand up and criticize or chastise that member for suggesting that Cape Breton be taken out of his name, yet he would stand up and tell us that all of a sudden there's another standard that's required. Well, Mr. Speaker, I suggest he deserves to show that same respect to the University College of Cape Breton for Breton University to receive what he expects of this House. This House should be shown the same respect back, and that member should be mindful of that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the member from Victoria the Lakes that had more of a political commentary than really a commentary to make on the name change for the university. And he can question what my loyalty or my intent is as a member, but I'll tell you, I stand up in Cape Breton North. I've done it once, I've done it twice, and I'll do it any time. If he wants to come into my constituency and ask me to be accountable for that, Mr. Speaker, whether it's Breton University or anything else that this progressive conservative government has done, we will stand for that. And I'll stand up, Mr. Speaker, and hold him accountable on my turf, because it's easy to throw a snowball over the side of Kelly's Mountain. But, Mr. Speaker, things are heating up and warming up because the economy's turning around, and this government's doing the necessary thing that member can't even think of doing, Mr. Speaker. And he wants to talk, Mr. Speaker, of those great Nova Scotian activities that we all see as icons. Mr. Speaker, he wanted to talk, the member for Victoria Lakes wanted to highlight the things that are near and dear to him, such as Celtic colours. He didn't talk about Cape Breton colours, he talked about Celtic colours, and everybody knows that is about Cape Breton. He talked about his love for the Cabot Trail, not the Cape Breton Trail. We all know that, Mr. Speaker, is part of Cape Breton. And Mr. Speaker, he suggested to me in terms of my effort that, the train is leaving the station. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you this. The only thing's off the rails in Cape Breton is the Liberal Party, and they're showing that here tonight. Mr. Speaker, the member for Victoria the Lakes wants to go on and suggest that if I don't know country music, and he quoted the song, Mr. Speaker, of "Pick Me Up on Your Way Down When You're Blue and All Alone." Well, I want to offer to that member, they may want to listen to some Alan Jackson, which is probably more appropriate, because he sings a great song, Here in the Real World, and that's where the rest of us in this legislature are this evening. In the real world, Mr. Speaker, respecting the institution of the Board of Governors for the University College of Cape Breton. And Mr. Speaker, he wants to talk about the acronym of Breton University and suggesting it's BU or BOO. Well, I tell you, he's bringing it down to a denominator Harvard University is not HU. Dalhousie University is not DU. Laurentian University is not LU, but it's Hugh, Do, and Lou, and I think he's going off of Disney now with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, because obviously he doesn't get it, Mr. Speaker, because he's dealing in another world that obviously is a made-up and fabricated one, and a lot of the commentary would suggest that someone's alluding to other things. But he suggests, Mr. Speaker, about a name change, about BU. Well, Mr. Speaker, maybe the Liberal Party should now be 3P, and that's not for contracts, that's third party, and at least that has been ingrained in this House in the last couple of go-arounds, and with the good sense of Nova Scotians and Cape Bretoners, Mr. Speaker, we'll keep it that way. But if he wants to get up, and those members that want to show rhetoric, I think what they need to do is show some respect again for that institution. And all kidding aside, and all light comments aside, Mr. Speaker, this is a serious issue, and it deserves a serious vote in this House, and that vote is yes for Breton University. Thank you.
The honourable member for Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was listening with great interest to the member from Cape Breton North, the Minister of Energy, until he made what I would call some absurd statements about the state of the Liberal Party in Cape Breton. It's not the Liberal Party, Mr. Speaker, in Cape Breton that lose their deposits regularly in industrial Cape Breton. It's the Tory Party. And those who win down there don't win by very much, and they only keep the seats temporarily, if you look at history. So I'd make sure if I was the minister that I'd research some of the stats on the recent elections at Cape Breton, and I don't think there's any Tories safe anywhere in Cape Breton today, in the past, or in the future. Having said that, the minister talks about the Liberal Party being last in third place. Well, I can tell you we're not in third place in Cape Breton, we're in first place in Cape Breton. Every poll consistently has stated in the past 3 or 4 years that corporate research have been polling that the Liberal Party continues to enjoy widespread support in Cape Breton. So I don't think the minister or the member from Cape Breton North can dismiss the Liberal Party, in Cape Breton, because I don't. Did you want to get up on a point of order?
Please. No member Cape Breton South has the floor.
Interrupting you, Mr. Minister, when you were speaking, so I'd appreciate the fact that I'm getting to the issue at hand in a moment. But you strayed from the issue, Mr. Minister, by talking about Liberals at Cape Breton. All I can tell you is we enjoy much more widespread support than your party does in Cape Breton. That is not an issue with anybody. That's fact. That is fact. Now, to the issue at hand regarding the name change at UCCB. Mr. Speaker, I would have preferred Cape Breton University or University of Cape Breton. As a matter of fact, I've said it publicly that I would have preferred just drop the word college, because I felt that as long as we had the word college in the university name, that we were suspect as an institute of higher learning. That if anybody was debating whether or not they go to a university across Canada, they would look at Dalhousie or St. Mary's or St. Yves or whatever, and they would see University College of Cape Breton, and for a second they would wonder, what's that all about? Why is it University College of Cape Breton? Well, I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that university in Cape Breton was born in very difficult circumstances because, as you know, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House will know, that at one time, Xavier Junior College in Sydney and its successor, St. Yves University, Sydney campus, were extensions of St. Yves University and extensions only of St. Yves University at the time. And I can recall, Mr. Speaker, when we had the university in the north end of Sydney, and some people would suggest it should still be in the north end of Sydney. If it was, we wouldn't have to worry about economic development of downtown Sydney. But in those days, the people that were in power at the time decided they couldn't decide where to put it in any city or town, so they put it out in the middle of nowhere, which caused us some problems and is still causing problems. But we can't turn that clock back, because there's a multi-million-dollar infrastructure out there that has to be cultivated and has to grow to even more greatness than it has to date. So out of the situation with St. Yves University Sydney campus or Xavier Junior College, both of which I attended. And when I attended Xavier Junior College, Mr. Speaker, it was in the old Lyceum building down in the North End, and it was a building that consisted of about 5 or 6 rooms, and that was it. And then when I got lucky enough to be able to go to the university, the Xavier or St. FX University Sydney campus and the beginning of UCCB, it was in the low garage building down on George Street on the 2nd floor. That's what they were trying to do to develop the university in Sydney. So we went from that, Mr. Speaker, to a situation where the people of the community decided they had to have their own university and break away finally from some would call the shackles of St. FX on the island. Even though St. FX has a very dominant position on Cape Breton Island, it has a very, very great position in my heart because my children are graduates of St. FX. Both my daughters are graduates of St. FX. But at the time, the Cape Breton community, business community, and academic community wanted something to call their own, a Cape Breton University. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? When we were trying to put the university together, lo and behold, the powers that be in the Department of Education or at St. FX lobbied not to allow the University of Cape Breton to be called a university. It had to be called the University College of Cape Breton, which didn't give us a leg up at that time. And the reason they gave was that, well, we offer other courses other than academics, so they have to put the word college in there. We were born, some said we were nothing more than a trade school at the time. So the founding of the university and the evolution of that university, Mr. Speaker, was achieved with great difficulty. Great difficulty. And for years, we've had to battle that what I call second-class status in the eyes of some people in the academic world, that we truly weren't the kind of university. Even though we've had excellence, I think, even though when we finally got degree granting status at the university, people were still saying that if you get a degree at UCCB, it's not as good as a degree in other universities. So what happened to a lot of the island children? They went off island. They went to St. FX. They went to St. Mary's. They went to the Mount. They went to UPEI. They went to Acadia. They went everywhere because they weren't sure whether the degree at UCCB at that time was going to help them. When they were looking for a postgraduate degree, or if they're going on to some other school of excellence or other degree at the master's level, for example. And I can tell you that that difficulty was highlighted with my own daughter, who first went to UCCB for a BA, and then found when she went into her BEd program at St. FX that some of the courses that she took at UCCB were not counted. So she had to switch. It took her a little bit longer. She had to get other courses in the summertime. So those were the difficulties over the years, and who knows why these things happen in universities? You know, who knows what would have happened if we had cooperation 25 or 30 years ago between St. FX and the people in Cape Breton that wanted a full degree granting university in Cape Breton at that time? I don't think we'd be here having this debate this evening. I really don't. You know, and Mr. Speaker, this has become an emotional issue. I really don't know how this got to the floor of the House here as a government bill. I'm still trying to figure that one out, because normally these bills come to the House by private member's bill. And I would have thought that if the Board of Governors were insisting that this bill come before this fall session, they would have asked their MLA to put the bill in. But they didn't. I don't know why they didn't. I can't, whether or not the Department of Education wanted to bring it in as a government bill, or whether the minister wanted it as a government bill, or whether or not the university wanted it as a government bill. I don't know. That's one question that has still not been answered to my satisfaction. A private member's bill, I think, would have perhaps served the day in this one. But I can tell you that back home, there's a difference of opinion in Cape Breton about this bill. There's no question about it, for different reasons. But I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, and go on the record, I have a great deal of faith in the Board of Governors of the University College of Cape Breton. I'll tell you why. I think they've come a long way, and they're They're doing a great job down there. They're people that give their time in the community. They don't get paid for this. You know, these Board of Governors are doing, and I believe, they're doing a great job. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the new president of the university has received widespread support for his efforts so far in Cape Breton. Having said that, and let me go back again, that I don't like the name Breton University either, but it's their decision. They made it at the board level. I would have rather seen University of Cape Breton, and I was, when this name change first came up, I said, look, finally they're going to drop the word college, and they're going to call it University of Cape Breton. I would have bet anybody any money that was going to happen. How the name Breton come up, I don't know. They say it was marketing studies. I have yet to see any marketing studies on that. But however, I say again, Mr. Speaker, that the Board of Governors are charged with the responsibility of running that institution. And they, to date, I think have done an admirable job giving the resources they have. It's one of the poorest funded universities in Canada, which is causing a great deal of problem in itself. And, Mr. Speaker, the Board of Governors have to deal with many other issues in the community, not the least of which is trying to create an identity. And that's difficult to do when you're not in the middle of a city, or whether you have a population of your university that goes out the front door every day and disperses to restaurants and lounges and department stores right down the street, such as the case with St. Mary's and Dalhousie in Halifax, and with St. Yves and Antigonish. You know, everybody is transient there, so it's difficult for the university, Board of Governors, and faculty to try to keep a community of interest there after school hours and during the course of the day when people are taking one course at one particular point in time and then not taking another one until the afternoon, and in the meantime don't have anywhere to go. It's a difficult situation for this university. I just wish, Mr. Speaker, and I'll tell you, and I've said it many, many times, that if the debate was raging about where that university would have went when I was mayor of Sydney, that university wouldn't be out there. I'll tell you that right now. Because I was a firm believer, and I was a firm believer that if you want to strengthen the core area of a city, you have to have academic facilities in that area, you have to have hospital facilities in that area, and you have to have a retail sector that's strong. When you start dividing them all over the place, then you run into problems. And that's the problem that university has had since the day of its inception. Even to the point where the little Xavier College, when it was in the north end of Sydney, or St. Yves University Sydney campus when it was down in the north end of Sydney, they created a lifeblood in the city. Their student population was out and among the community all day, every day, and in the evenings. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? I raise that because that was a compromise in those days. I know what happened there. The Minister of Education, I believe, there's a minister in the government, and the government of the day were arguing about where the college should go. Every MLA in Cape Breton was lobbying for the university, UCCB. The members from the city at that time were lobbying. They happened to be Tories at the time. The member from Cape Breton West was lobbying. He happened to be a Liberal. He was the cabinet minister. The member from Glace Bay was lobbying. The member from New Waterford was lobbying, who was also a Tory. But you know what they did, Mr. Speaker? They didn't put it in any municipality, except they put it in rural Cape Breton County, halfway between Glace Bay and Sydney. And they thought, as politicians, that was the right thing to do. It was a compromise. Now, what thought went into the future of the university and the future impact in the community that university would have had when the decision was made to put it equally halfway between Sydney and Glace Bay? On the highway. On the highway. Now, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you something else. Fast forward to a few years when the Canada Games were coming to Cape Breton. I was mayor then. And there was a move afoot to put a 5,000-seat arena out at the college and not in downtown Sydney. Well, guess what, Mr. Speaker? I started digging Centre 200 before they got a chance. to put it out there without any money. Because I said this mistake is not going to be made twice. And what happened was, well, yes, that's right. They didn't want it in downtown Sydney, so we're reversing the situation now. I couldn't get any money out of the Honourable Minister, who's now the Mayor of Port Hawkesbury at the time, you know, because they were all on the Canada Games Committee and they were all out at the university. You know what my argument was then, Mr. Speaker? My argument then, Mr. Speaker, was they should forget about a rink that'll be a white elephant out there. What they should do is build student residences then, not trying to build them in the past few years. The university would have been light years ahead had they done that. Now what are they talking about? Talking about closing the rink out there. They don't even have a hockey team. And they got this NHL-sized arena out there that I think some of the people at the university that are in charge of the finances there would disappear. But the reason I point that out is that sometimes we make decisions for the wrong reasons. And are we set to make another decision here? Are we causing a great deal of confrontation in the Sydney area, in all of Cape Breton actually, because of a name of a university? Again, the university's history was born under very, very difficult circumstances with the St. FX influence, but more than that, Mr. Speaker, the political maneuvering in Cape Breton in those days, all the way up through anything that was going to be built in Cape Breton. There was always political interference. And I would hope that when the dust settles on this issue, that the government, because it is a government bill, will allow this bill to go through without the government putting a heavy hand on this. I believe this is a matter that should be discussed adequately. If there are people on both sides of this issue feel that strongly in Cape Breton, they should have a right to exercise that, because this is a huge issue, an issue that's creating a lot of problems in Cape Breton right now because of the dropping of the name Cape. You know, again, I wish it was still there, but however, I believe it deserves a full airing, and I believe we have to give the people who want to question this name an opportunity to say so to the Law Amendments Committee. So when this bill gets there, I would hope that as much time will be allowed for people who feel very strongly about it. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, I haven't had that much representation to date against the bill. But what I have had is those who have responded responded to me and me asking the question publicly. I'm waiting to hear from people in the community. Those who have responded are very interested in bringing their concerns before the Law Amendments Committee. Now, the government put itself in this fix because the government introduced this bill as a government bill. So it's the government at Law Amendments that are going to have to decide how much time they're going to give the people of Cape Breton to discuss this bill, and it could be where they give the people of Cape Breton the opportunity to discuss this bill. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that when this bill gets to Law Amendments, I think my colleague from Glace Bay already alluded to the fact that we may want these hearings to go to Sydney, you know, to give adequate representation from the people down there who are concerned about this bill. Again, Mr. Speaker, I'll wind up by saying that my preference was University of Cape Breton, but I have to temper that by saying that I have a great deal of respect for the Board of Directors and the president of the university, who I think are doing a great job down there under very difficult circumstances. So, you know what? I'm going to hear what they have to say, and hopefully the arguments will be compelling on both sides, because we have got ourselves in this fix now where we have to listen to both sides of this argument. And I believe that one side deserves as much hearing as the other. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Recognize the member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, much been said tonight, Mr. Speaker, and I found out from a long time ago from my dear departed mother, when there was the 15 of us fighting across the table for food, that I was never the voice of reason in my family, so I'm not going to try to be the voice of reason tonight. But what I want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, is the fact I'll probably really optimistic about this and say the great thing about this debate is that the fine institution of the University College Cape Breton is getting spoken about and talked about on the floor of this legislation because, Mr. Speaker, that is one of the major driving forces around the turnaround of the economy of Cape Breton. None of us are sitting in these seats, but that institution, Mr. Speaker, and whatever we call it, at the end of the day, we all have to rally around that as a center of diversity, of a center that's going to build our economy, and that's what it's about. It's not about the name. You know what, Mr. Speaker, I've got to say that the member from Glace Bay and I go back a lot longer than we'd like to mention some days, Mr. Speaker, and I respect him immensely. But we're on the different sides of this. No, I mean, I hear some oohs over there, but I'll tell you what, Mr. Speaker, there was nights I could tell you about where I was in situations that I was glad the member from Glace Bay was at my back. And I'll always say that public, I'll say it in this house, I'll say other places about him. But Mr. Speaker, that's what tonight is about. Tonight is about really, that something's going to happen here and not everybody is going to be satisfied. That's the reality of it, Mr. Speaker. The member from Cape Breton South spoke and said, if he had, if he was the one running the institution, certainly he would like to see the University College of Cape Breton. And there's University of Cape Breton, Mr. Speaker. These are things that, we wish we could have had. So it's not, I don't think at the end of the day, should be so pro and con. I think what we have to do is look at this and say, like, these are reasonable, hardworking people, the Board of Governors, who did this change not with malice, not with any utter disregard for Cape Breton, but for their institution. So at the end of this debate, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask all members to whatever, if this motion carries, I can live with it. If this motion falls and we become the University of Cape Breton, I can live with it. But you know what we've got to realize is that we've got to take the energy in which we're speaking about that university in this chamber tonight and keep it going. Keep speaking highly about that. Keep pursuing it from Vancouver to Newfoundland, Mr. Speaker. That's what we've got to do. We've got to be single-purposed in that because, again, Mr. Speaker, I can't say enough of what that is going to mean to the economy of Cape Breton. Mr. Speaker, I have a son that's a graduate from UCCB. I have a daughter in her 4th year, and they disagree with me. They don't want the name change. So you can imagine what supper was like in the weekend at my place. And so, but nobody called me. Nobody called me any of the names that were called in this chamber tonight, Mr. Speaker, but it was heated and lively too. But but Mr. Speaker, that's the depth. That is the depth of where this comes at back home. That these people have these strong emotional ties to that. And I understand that as one son's alumnus and my daughter who will soon be one. So I respect that. But please, no. Some people say they have my brains because my wife still has hers. But but Mr. Speaker, let's not get lost in any of the hyperbole. I mean, like, I respect both sides in this debate, and I think what we've got to do is, at the end of the day, do the best thing for that institution. And when it's all said and done, and if we're not on the prevailing side, is that at least be on the side of the university when this is all said and done, and we can move the community forward educationally and economically. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
If I recognize the Honourable Minister of Education, has closed debate on Bill number 97. The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and this has been rather spirited debate on this bill, and I did listen quite intently to just about all of the remarks that were made in here, and I don't like to praise people on the other side of the House, but I did think the member from Cape Breton South, he had the history of that institution and some of the problems that it faced and the conclusion that he came to, I thought, was very reasoned and appropriate. My colleague from Timberley Prospect had good comments the other day. The member from Glace Bay spoke passionately. My colleague from Cape Breton North, a colleague from Cape Breton Centre, and the colleague from Cape Victoria the Lakes. Everybody had, it was really a good and informed debate. But just in closing this, I think it's been pointed out that any time you change the name of an institution, it's difficult. And, you go ask 5 people, and maybe 3 people like the name and 2 people don't. But the fact is that decision was recommended by a board of governors, which represents all facets of Cape Breton community as well as the university community. And Mr. Speaker, I thank everybody for the helpful interventions, and I want to move this forward to the law amendments process. But I would like people to remember, that the board of governors, whether you like the name or you don't like the name or you would like another choice, as the member from Cape Breton South has well pointed out, it's a move and it's representing the future of the university, as the member from Cape Breton North, and we should never forget that. We don't want to look back, we want to look ahead. Mr. Speaker, I now move second reading of Bill number 91, whatever it is.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 97. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried.
An act to change the name of the University College of Cape Breton and to amend Chapter 484 of the Revised Statutes 1989, University College of Cape Breton Act and related statutes.
Further, this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, would you please call Bill number 111, the French Language Services Act.
Bill number 111, French Language Services Act. The Honourable Minister responsible for Acadian Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to open second reading of the debate on Bill number 111, the French Language Services Act. I'll be presenting in both French and English, but I will be translating all my words for your benefit, Mr. Speaker. As outlined in the bill, the French Language Services Act will ensure that the needs of Acadian French-speaking citizens of Nova Scotia are considered in the delivery of programs and services and the development of policies throughout the provincial government and other public institutions. Mr. Speaker, it's timely that this law be proclaimed during the historic year 2004. It marks the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first permanent French settlement. In fact, it was in 1604 that 120 Frenchmen left Havre de Grace, France, and was established on St. Croix Island. That's what's becoming the beginning of the first permanent French presence in North America. L'introduction de ce projet de loi vient juste à temps. Cette année représente le 400e anniversaire de la fondation de l'Acadie. Et en effet, c'est en 1604 que 120 Français quittaient le port français de Havre de Grace et bâtissaient sur l'île Sainte-Croix le premier établissement qui allait mener à une présence française permanente en Amérique du Nord. Ainsi, ce projet de loi sur les services en français va contribuer à la préservation et à l'épanouissement de la communauté acadienne et francophone, permettre au gouvernement de spécifier quel établissement public a une obligation de fournir des services en langue française, conseiller et appuyer les agences gouvernementales pour leurs programmes, leurs politiques et leurs services tiennent compte des besoins de la communauté acadienne et francophone, instituer l'Office des affaires acadiennes en tant qu'agence centrale de soutien pour les services de langue française offerts au ministère du gouvernement, mettre en place des partenaires avec des agences acadiennes et francophones au niveau provincial, national et international, et reconnaître la contribution de la communauté acadienne et francophone. Therefore, the French Services Act will contribute to the preservation and growth of the Acadian francophone community, enable government to specify which public institutions have an obligation to provide French services, and advise and support government agencies to reflect the needs of the Acadian francophone community in their policies and services. Develop the Office of Acadian Affairs as a central support agency for French language services for other government departments. Develop partnerships with Acadian and francophone agencies at the provincial, national, international levels, and recognize the contribution of the Acadian and francophone community. Avec l'aide de la communauté, représentée par la Fédération acadienne, l'Office des affaires acadiennes fera des recommandations et préparera des plans d'action, de programmes et de politiques. Il assurera la coordination et le suivi de ces plans, de ces programmes et de ces politiques une fois que leur mise en œuvre aura été faite. Il fera également des recommandations concernant le financement des programmes, des services et des politiques et répondra aux préoccupations du public concernant les programmes et les services en langue française. With the help of the community, as represented by the Acadian Federation of Nova Scotia, the Office of Acadian Affairs will prepare and recommend plans, programs, and policies, and coordinate and monitor them once implemented. It will also make recommendations regarding the financing of government programs, services, and policies, and respond to the public concerns about French language programs and services. Other provisions under the proposed Act call for the appointment of French language coordinators in all departments and offices, as well as a coordinating committee, whose job will be to advise and assist in the implementation of this Act. I want to personally thank the Fédération Acadienne de Nouvelle-Écosse for their very hard work in this collaboration, and also for their engagement to participate in the formulation of all the regulations that will follow this Act. Mr. Speaker, it's indeed a pleasure for me to submit this French language services legislation for second reading. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the member Cole-Harbour and passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to have an opportunity to speak on this bill, and it's a bill that many will know that I raised as an issue in the spring, both with the minister and publicly. This is the 400th anniversary of the Acadians arriving in Nova Scotia, a very significant date, not only for the Acadians, but for quite frankly, the history of our country, for the history of North America. They were the first people of European descent to settle in North America, north of, I guess it would be Florida, when, if I could only remember the name of the town, St. Augustine in the 1500s. In fact, I know that in my own writing on McNabb's Island, the French were settled there during the summertime as a fishing village in the 1550s. So the French have a long history of coming to Nova Scotia. They're now a minority in this province. They've been a minority in this province going back to at least 1755 and maybe even earlier, obviously 1749, Mr. Speaker. And I guess the real crux of this bill is, let me back up and say, Mr. Speaker, that we will be voting in favor of this bill, not because we think it fulfills what the minister has described, but because I believe on behalf of the Acadian and Francophone communities of this province, it's important that they get a quarter of a loaf instead of no loaf. And in the case of this bill, I'm even, I think, being generous in saying that this provides them with a quarter of a loaf with regard to them guaranteeing the services they need in French. To be able to go to a hospital and know that they'll be able to speak to someone in their native language if they don't speak English or their English isn't very good. To be able to go and obtain a driver's license or a vehicle registration permit, to be able to go to court in the middle of a child protection hearing or in the middle of a divorce. You don't have those rights now. To go to court in your own language, you don't have the right to receive a driver's license in French. You don't have a right. Someone was describing to me the other day about how even having an accent over the name, like René or Côté, the driver's license in this province, Service Nova Scotia, won't even allow that. Because in this province, you do not have a right as a Francophone to be able to obtain these services in your own language. And that's a shame. And what I pushed for, and what the Fédération Acadienne de Nouvelle-Écosse, and what many other Acadian and Francophone advocates in this province pushed for, was a bill that substantively would provide for those services. Now, I want to say that I respect this minister and what he's done. I know he has done the best he can to get a bill into this House that recognizes at least the beginning of the possibility of services for Francophones and Acadians in this province, Mr. Speaker. The problem is, I would suggest to you that he is one minister in a cabinet that probably was not very keen on seeing legislation that really did provide for the kind of services that are needed for the people of this province who speak French, Mr. Speaker. That is the problem with this legislation. And as I said in the media on Friday, and I'll say it here in the House on the record, that if the minister thinks he's going to get regulations through that will provide the protection and the enhancement of services in French for the Francophones and Acadians in this province, then it should be in this legislation, and Cabinet would have passed it already. Because the same group that had to approve this legislation, which I will say is vague as to the rights of Acadians and Francophones in this province, will also have to approve those regulations that will provide more substantive rights for Acadians and Francophones in this province. And if they weren't willing to approve this bill before it was introduced in the House, I don't know why the minister thinks that they're going to approve a more substantive regulations that would provide for exactly the same thing, Mr. Speaker. And that is the dilemma this government faces. That's a dilemma this minister faces. This is a government, and I said it in the media as well, and I'll say it again here on the record, the Conservative government of this province is not a friend of the Francophone community in Nova Scotia, is not a friend of the Acadian community in Nova Scotia, notwithstanding the work that's being done by this minister, who I agree has done a lot for the Acadian community, but he faces another 24 members of his bench who really don't see this as a priority, and that's a shame. He knew, that government knew, that my party and the Liberal Party would support more substantive legislation. There was no political reason why that legislation could be brought through. We weren't going to oppose it. The Liberal Party wasn't going to oppose it. The Francophone community would be supportive. I didn't hear anyone in the Anglophone community complaining about the possibility of some services being provided. Mr. Speaker, the problem was that this government felt that it was not something that they probably ideologically wanted to see happen. That's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, and it's unfortunate for the Acadian community. We will see this legislation pass to second reading. We will go to law amendments and hear what people have to say at that point, Mr. Speaker. I think it's important that the people in this province have an opportunity to have their say. I'm sure many Acadians would like to come forward and speak as well. Unfortunately, it'll have to probably be in their second language in most cases if they're Francophone, Mr. Speaker, but at least we'll begin to hear the possibility of tinkering with this bill, of somehow trying to entrench in it, even in the smallest or most remote way, the possibility, Mr. Speaker, that we would be able to have some guarantee that some services will be provided someday in the future. I'm not talking about tomorrow. I understand this government won't allow that, but maybe in 4 or 5 years, we may be able to see the beginning of the protection of rights and the ability to provide certain services, whether it's going to a hospital, whether it's getting a driver's license, whether it's going to family court, begin to see those things taking place and coming into fruition, Mr. Speaker. And I think that's why it's important that we have that ability to do that. Monsieur Président, c'est me faire plaisir de dire quelques mots sur le projet de loi numéro 111 au sujet de créer un bureau des affaires acadiens et aussi pourvoir aux services en français. Monsieur le Président, je dois dire que je suis très déçu avec ce projet de loi. C'est important de dire que j'ai confiance que le ministère des Affaires acadien aimerait produire législation qui pourvoit aux services en français en Nouvelle-Écosse. J'ai rencontré avec le ministère ce printemps passé. Je pense qu'il doit être aussi déçu avec ce projet de loi. Peut-être. C'est tout à fait évident que les autres ministères qui s'assiedent autour de la table ministérielle ne partagent pas le dédicacé de membres honorables et des peuples acadiens et les autres pour que le français est la langue maternelle. Il me fait triste que pendant cette année qui célébrait des peuples acadiens et la culture acadienne en Nouvelle-Écosse, que ce gouvernement ne pourrait pas introduire un meilleur projet de loi que le l'une devant nous aujourd'hui. Cette législation proposée n'est pas garantir des services fondamentaux en français. Cette législation est faible. Le gouvernement pourrait, quelques jours à l'avenir, probablement, peut-être, faire des règles qui pourraient, quelques jours à l'avenir, probablement, peut-être, pourvoir aux services en français. Ceci est inadéquat. Et dans l'année des Acadiens, nous devons créer la législation améliorée qui met les droits des francophones. Nous devons commencer avec des services de santé et alors ajouter d'autres services importants comme obtenir des permis de conduire, le certificat de naissance et l'enregistrement des véhicules en français. Finalement, Monsieur le Président, on doit avoir une vision et un plan de proviser des autres services fondamentaux en français. L'accès pour les francophones à les services de gouvernement en français est très important. Nous devons protéger la langue et la culture des Acadiens en Nouvelle-Écosse. Je veux une loi substantive, Monsieur le Président, pour les francophones en Nouvelle-Écosse. Cette loi n'est pas substantive. Le francophone en Nouvelle-Écosse vole plus. Merci beaucoup.
Recognize the honourable member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise and say a few words on Bill number 111. But I want to start off by saying to my honourable colleague from Cole Harbour, Eastern Shore, I believe, Eastern Passage, that the effort certainly, I'm sure, was greatly appreciated by the whole Acadian community. I know it's extremely difficult at times to especially deliver a speech and at the same time try to translate what you're thinking, especially in another language, because I've been there on many, many occasions. So I want to just compliment my colleague on a job well done. Monsieur le Président, je suis heureux que le gouvernement provincial a décidé de franchir une autre étape dans l'élaboration de plans pour répondre aux besoins de services en français en Nouvelle-Écosse. C'est tout à fait une démarche appropriée, étant donné que nous célébrons cette année la 400e anniversaire de l'arrivée des Français dans le nord de l'Amérique. En lisant attentivement à ce projet de loi, le bill nombre 111, ce projet de loi tel que proposé, je vois que le gouvernement a pris une décision concrète. Et c'est celle de nommer des coordinateurs des services en français dans les différents ministères du gouvernement. Et je souhaite que le gouvernement va procéder immédiatement à embaucher ces coordinateurs tels qu'on indique dans l'article 8 de ce projet de loi. Je suis heureux que ce projet de loi est une continuation des efforts déployés par les gouvernements provinciaux précédents de la province pendant plusieurs années. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say a few words on Bill number 111. This bill proposes better French services for Nova Scotians. Once this bill becomes law, and only then it will be time to rejoice. Because, Mr. Speaker, until pieces of legislation are proclaimed, often government priorities changes along the way. And bills sometimes are put on back burners. Mr. Speaker, this bill raises questions as well. Under Section 2 of this proposed act, the government is looking at providing the delivery of French language services in designated public institutions. Mr. Speaker, of course, in designating certain public institutions, many people, and I say many people, will be looking for that list of these public institutions. Une autre section de ce projet de loi, Monsieur le Président, soulève d'autres questions, et c'est la section 8. Et je veux faire référence au projet de loi, section 8, qui dit simplement le sous-ministre de chaque ministère et le directeur général de chaque office nomment un coordinateur des services en français chargé de l'assister et de le conseiller dans la mise en œuvre de la présente loi. Monsieur le Président, la première question à poser est d'essayer de découvrir quand le gouvernement ou le ministre prévoit à embaucher, à appointer ces coordinateurs de services en français. D'autres questions reliées aux futurs coordinateurs au sein des ministères sont comment est-ce que ces coordinateurs-là vont être choisis? Qui va les choisir? Ces postes-là vont-ils être affichés? Et quelles seront les tâches spécifiques de ces coordinateurs? Mr. Speaker, another concern I wish to raise is looking at Section 10 of this bill. The Governor and Council may make regulations to support certain sections of this bill. Again, without a look at these regulations, it's extremely difficult to know exactly what the government is proposing to do and when or what the timelines will be, Mr. Speaker, in order to bring this bill forward. J'espère que le projet de loi tel que proposé sera défini dans des règlements et procédures immédiatement après qu'une consultation générale avec la population prendra place. Je souhaite que la consultation soit faite par des représentants de nos institutions acadiennes et de la population acadienne en général. En regardant de près ce projet de loi, je réalise qu'il sera nécessaire de débourser des fonds pour défrayer les coûts de ce qui est proposé ici, Monsieur le Président. Et en terminant, Monsieur le Président, j'espère, et je suis certain, je ne suis pas le seul qui espère, je suis certain que beaucoup de gens de cette province espèrent que dans le prochain budget qui sera porté et déposé en Chambre au printemps prochain, que dans le budget, on va faire référence aux besoins identifiés dans ce projet de loi ici. Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour avoir l'attention de la Chambre.
Recognize the Honourable Minister of Acadian Affairs to be to close debate on Bill number 111. The Honourable Minister responsible for Acadian Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Monsieur le Président, il fait un grand plaisir d'écouter et puis prendre note des commentaires qui ont justement été faits. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Took good notice and took notes on the comments here today on Bill 111. Acadians in Nova Scotia have been asking for a long time for French services, and I do agree with that comment. They represent 37,000 people and about 900,000 person population in Nova Scotia. So every little bit counts in what we pull forward here. Put it this way, a Conservative government brought forward the Office of Acadian Affairs back in 1984. This Conservative government brought forward the Office of Acadian Affairs in its current form with offices and made it a little more beyond the executive assistant format that it had before. So bringing real value to Acadian Affairs. So I look forward to more deliberations as it passes through the House. Again, also thank you to the member of Cole Harbour Eastern Passage for his effort to do that in French. I think the Acadians will really appreciate that. So, Mr. Speaker, I move second reading of the Bill 111.
Motion for second reading of Bill 111. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Counterminded nay. Motion is carried.
L'Office des affaires acadiens et la prestation par la fonction publique des services en français, an act respecting the Office of Acadian Affairs and the delivery of French language services by the public service.
Order this bill to refer to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Would you please call Bill 119, the Agricultural Administration Amendment 2004 Act.
Bill number 119, the Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In an effort to make this a little shorter then, I'm going to go right into it. Pleased to bring forward today the Agricultural Administration Amendment Act for second reading. To make doing business with the government more efficient, we need to update some of the legislation that creates hindrances for our industry. As you're aware, the agriculture sector is a significant economic driver in Nova Scotia, and especially in its rural areas. Agriculture is not just a way of doing business, but a way of life. The amendments proposed will create more efficiencies and get rid of lots of red tape. One amendment will give the authority to the minister to establish committees to seek advice on such programs, policies, and standards. This amendment will also allow the minister to appoint a representative from the Federation of Agriculture as an advisory committee member. There are a number of changes proposed within this section for agricultural education. With the evolution of the Nova Scotia Agricultural College, there needs to be various revisions. College has changed a lot since its beginnings in 1905, and since 1985, NSAC has offered degrees, and in 1993 implemented a graduate program. As it is now written, the section no longer reflects NSAC's mandate, its structures, or activities that enable it to carry out its day-to-day administrative or operational activities. The clause regarding changing the college name makes it clear that Governor and Council approval is required to change the name of the college. So it's another, probably not as big as the question for our Breton University, but definitely one that did create a little bit of a fuss in the last few months. Of course, research is a big mandate of NSAC, and that we want the new mandate to reflect that as well. And I'll do this quickly here. In closing, I've highlighted some of the proposed amendments, and I did have a good briefing with my opposition critics a few days ago. So therefore, they are worthy amendments that I feel, and have important influences on our agriculture industry that represent today's needs and are good for the industry, the department, and government in general. Mr. Speaker, I move second reading of the Agricultural Amendment Act.
The honourable member for Hants East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll try to make my comments brief as well. I want to thank the minister for his briefing the other day. It was helpful. I think actually the copy that we've received since, which was in we actually could read it, has been a little more helpful as well. I want to say that there are many things about this bill. It's a housekeeping bill for the most part, Mr. Speaker, and I think that most of it actually makes sense. There are a couple of questions I've had, and I've been back and forth to the minister, and he's helped explain a few things. I think for Clause 3, that the appointment of a superintendent of agriculture can be done by the minister, or for agricultural associations, can be done by the minister instead of going back to governor and council. I think that makes a lot of sense. I could see that being very cumbersome under the present legislation, and so certainly would allow a little more flexibility, and I don't see any need to go to the governor and council on day-to-day operations such as that. This piece of legislation actually amends about 6 acts, Mr. Speaker, and so I can see the department and the minister trying to clean up a number of things. The payment of grants to agricultural societies. This is one that's not clear. I know the minister's explanation that it will go to the Exhibition Association, and they will disperse the dollars to the exhibitions. I'm curious as to the previous nature of that, if that seemed to be a little too cumbersome. I was surprised, I guess, to find that the Nova Scotia Agricultural College and farm, the removal of the word farm, I got to say that in my time of even in grade 12, I applied to the Agricultural College and was accepted, didn't go, but didn't realize that that it was the Agricultural College and farm. So I think for the minister to try to bring the college more in line with the present reality is a good thing to do. To emphasize the research component, I think, is a good thing to do. I'd like to just state to the minister, and I made this comment earlier, but for the record, that in terms of research, that partnerships that the college may enter into. To a point, I see these as partnerships with the government, and that any research that the college does partner with, that the product of that research, depending on the sensitivity of the nature of it, that is information that's relayed to the public, in particular if it's taxpayers' dollars that's going to be involved with that. One thing I would say that at first blush that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Mr. Speaker, and that's in Part 1, the Agricultural Marketing Act. the minister has already indicated about his ability to establish an advisory committee to advise the minister on policy and programs and standards, and I have to say, who's doing that now? You know, I mean, I know I'm trying to, but I, you know, this was the party and the government that was going to cut red tape, reduce agencies, boards, and commissions, and although I don't consider a committee to be necessarily any one of those, but I'm curious, I guess, as to how this committee would be formed and how its objective, which seems to be straightforward enough, but it would seem that since we have a department, we must have people who advise the minister on policy and programs, and so and think about all the organizations that may come and try to impress upon the minister some need that they have in regard to policy. The Federation would be the first one, and I think this also includes appointing a member from the Federation on this committee. So I just have I guess a question of getting my head around the actual function of this, because if we need it, that's assuming that we don't have such a thing happening now. And I think there probably are people trying to advise the minister. So, but at some point, the minister and I, we will talk a little more about that. I guess the last item for me comes around the. I got the right part of the bill here. Farm Registration Act. The question was raised some time ago, and actually by the Federation around the registration fees and the fact that the Federation wanted the ability to retain the membership fees that when people pay their fee to the Federation, and I don't see. I guess, and we had some discussion of why that's not in this bill. The minister approached me as the critic from our caucus. I know he spoke with the Liberal critic, and you know, this was something that I think we made our commitment to the minister that we had no problem with this. It seemed straightforward. The Federation wanted it, and so I have to say that like my colleague from Cole Harbour Eastern Passage on the previous bill, I'm just wondering if the minister had problems getting it by his own cabinet. That is there some reason that his colleagues didn't want to go down this road, and so I'm a little curious about that. The numbers of members who ask for a rebate on their fees is not significant if you compare the number of farms that are registered, and so. With both opposition parties in agreement on this, I'm just wondering why it is that the minister didn't bring this forward, because we would have supported him on it. So, and I'm curious if his colleagues didn't support him on this. But with those few comments, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we are supportive of these changes. I think it helps with the administration of a variety of acts and does do some housekeeping, and we look forward to see it move forward, Mr. Speaker.
Recognized gentleman member for Annapolis.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise and speak to Bill 119, the Agricultural Administration Amendment Act. I also want to thank the minister for the briefing that he gave to us. During that briefing, the minister expressed that the existing legislation simply didn't reflect today's needs for the producers or government, and he claimed that these changes will reduce the red tape and provide more flexibility for agricultural organizations. Mr. Speaker, the relationship between the industry and government has been strained for over the last 5 years. Since 2000, the government gutted the department budget, which did not help, and this minister, unfortunately, is being charged to rebuild that trust, and he can do that by assuring the House that there has been extensive consultations in crafting of this bill. It makes many changes, including the changes to the Crop and Livestock Insurance Commission Act, which would revise the definition of insurable crop and insurable livestock.
It will also allow the Commission to fix unit price, premium rates, and benefit levels. Premium rates and unit prices are revised annually for 14 insurance plans by the Crop and Livestock Insurance Commission. The Minister assures us that with this amendment, the Commission will be able to be more responsive to the market conditions and farmer-client needs. I hope this is the case, and I look forward to seeing the results of this change. And I would also hope that the Minister is consulted when making these changes as well. Other changes highlighted in this bill include an attempt to clarify and update legislation affecting Nova Scotia Agricultural College in Bible Hill. An amendment would allow the Minister to approve agreements between the college and other parties, such as research partnerships. It would also give agricultural societies more flexibility for year-end financial reporting and allow the Minister to establish an advisory committee on programs, policies, and standards. This amendment would also allow the Minister to appoint a Federation of Agricultural representative to the advisory committee. It is certainly a welcome move to appoint a member of the Federation to an advisory committee. Again, the Federation plays a vital role in the future of agriculture, including advocacy for new innovations and better education. This bill also amends the Agriculture and Rural Credit Act, so it clearly defines the Farm Loan Board's ability to lease land, farm buildings, and equipment. As well, it amends the Farm Registration Act to remove any possible conflicts relating to having an appeal committee make decisions on previous hearings that it already had. But what's missing, Mr. Speaker, is with the farm registration. I want to congratulate the member from Hants East bringing it forward. I also look forward to this amendment coming through, or another piece of legislation coming through, when the Minister can convince his cabinet colleagues to join him and push this forward. This is really the only thing that I heard from the agricultural community that they were looking forward to seeing brought before the House in this session. So I would encourage him to revisit that idea before the session goes out, and perhaps maybe there can be an amendment made to this bill before we bring it back for third reading. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to sending this to law amendments and seeing what the agricultural community has to say. Thank you.
Recognize the Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries to close debate on Bill number 119. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this act does do a number of acts and updates them. Some of them well over 100 years old, as with the Nova Scotia Agricultural College and Farm, apparently. So we can see a little confusion in that. The Federation, of course, has been consulted on a number of these items, and we hope their continued support of these things will come forward. And I will take some of those issues forward to my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I move second reading of Bill number 119, the Agriculture Amendment Act.
Motion is for second reading Bill number 119. Is the House ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried.
119, entitled An Act Respecting the Administration of Agriculture.
Order this bill refer to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, I'd ask for the unanimous consent of the House to revert to the order of business presenting reports of committees.
Is it agreed? Presenting reports of committees. The Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Speaker, as Chairman of the Private and Local Bills Committee, I'm directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bill, Bill number 82, an act to amend Chapter 55, the Acts of 1963, the Halifax Regional Water Commission Act. The committee recommends this bill to the favorable consideration of the House without amendment.
Order this bill be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chairman of the Committee on Law Amendments, I am directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bills. Bill number 92, an act to amend Chapter 293 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Motor Vehicle Act. Bill number 93, an act respecting the municipal taxation of a natural gas distribution system. Bill number 98, an act to amend Chapter 18 of the Acts of 1998, the Municipal Government Act. Bill number 103, an act to amend Chapter 393 of the Revised Statutes 1989, the Regulations Act. The committee recommends these bills to the favorable consideration of the House without amendment.
Order these bills be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as Chairman of the Committee on Law Amendments, I am further directed to report that the committee has met and considered the following bill. Bill number 90, an act to amend Chapter 4 of the Acts of 1995, the Highway 104 Western Alignment Act. The committee recommends this bill to the favorable consideration of the House with certain amendments.
Order this bill be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on Bills. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, I move the House to now rise to meet again on the morrow at the hour of 11 a.m. and the House will sit from 11 until 5 p.m. Following the order of business, the daily routine, the House will proceed to government business and then revert back to question period at 1 p.m. This will accommodate those who will be absent from the House attending other functions, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the business tomorrow will be public bills for second reading and committee of the whole House on bills.
Motion is the House adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried. The House adjourned to 11 a.m.